Okay, thank you everyone for joining me on today's very special Handmade Hero episode. I don't actually know that it's going to be very special, but isn't every day kind of special at the end of the day? Like, I mean, if every day is precious, I think that there's probably some kind of weird spiritual book you could read somewhere that says something like you need to treat every day as precious or special or some other nonsense like this. And so I feel like if today isn't special, then really no day is special. And who wants to live in a world where not every day is special or that they never have a special day? I mean, furthermore, why would you want to have only some days be special when every day could be special? I think it just doesn't even make any sense. So I feel like this is going to be a very special episode of Handmade Hero, just like every episode of Handmade Hero is incredibly, incredibly special. Almost oppressively special, if you will. So special that its specialness may, in fact, render everything else that you do in your life sort of inconsequential and dismal by comparison. That's not my fault. That's just how special we are here. So let's go ahead and get started because we have some work to do today. It's day 265, and you're going to want to unpack the very special code from day 264 into a directory somewhere if you're trying to follow along with what I'm doing, because that's the code I'm starting with. And honestly, it's pretty special. So here comes our code. And I'm going to compile it. And then I'm going to run, nope, not like that. And then I'm going to run it using the very special, and I mean that in sort of a different way now, Microsoft Visual Studio. So let's go ahead and get that running here. Where we left off is we had made some little buttons, right, that we could use to interact with our profiler or really anything else that we wanted to. And we just put those in. And we have a number of things now where we've got like sort of debug control stuff that we can use. We can pause the game and jump around and that sort of stuff. But we kind of need to clean a little bit of this up. First of all, we had to clean up the layout thing a little bit because we never we never really did a proper abstraction for lines that have stuff glommed onto themselves. Because as you can see, our first one is erroneously not indented. All of these should have been indented, right? And similarly, we sort of have a weird situation where these are kind of, we can't even tell that these are buttons. So I think what we want to do is just expand this UI a little bit and make this work a little bit better. Just kind of clean it up now that we know what it looks like and have some things that use it. The other thing that we might want to do, and I'm not sure if we really care about this or not, well, you know what we could do too? The other thing we could do is put that off a little bit, and what we could do is also make a profile top list, where we could basically say, like, give us what functions are taking the most time, and stuff like that, which is pretty handy as well, right? So those are just some things that we could do. I'm not sure exactly what we will do, but that's kind of where we are at. And what this means for you, the glorified listener, is that today will be a sort of a debug profile UI day one way or the other. One thing that I do wonder is, do we still have the ability to do all this fancy stuff? We do. That's pretty cool. I really like how we can tear things off. It's like, oh, do you want another profile? Like, is this not enough profiling for you? Maybe it's not. Sometimes, you know, you just need a little more profiling. So what you can do is you can just say like, oh, I want another profile here. Let's go ahead and grab that off. Here we go. And now I think, if I'm not very much in error, which maybe I am, you can actually, these are totally separate, which is kind of awesome too. So I can have two of these and I can like drill down in one of them, right? And it doesn't affect the other one, which is also pretty cool, right? I like that a lot. You know, it just means I think we did a pretty reasonable job on the architecture. You know what I'm saying? Anyway. Yeah. Anyway, let's go ahead and dive in here. So the first thing we need is we need to add into our debug control, we need a way of putting some pause. Like, we don't really have a way to do the pause control right now. And I need to have that happen. So what I want to do is say, well, we have these Boolean buttons. So I'm going to make in our debug control, wherever that nonsense is, debug control, where are you at? It's like frame slider, something like that. Oops. Frame slider. In our debug control, I want to make some buttons that go with the frame slider, if that makes sense. And I want those to be able to do some operations for us, right? So the first thing I want to do is make like a pause button that reflects the state of the debug pause, right? So we'll just say debug state pause is the state of that. So if it's true, then it's paused. If it's false, it won't be. And then in here, we just need a thing which says what kind of interaction we want to do. And I guess in this case, we want to do a set uint32 interaction maybe. And we just say we want to change the pause to, I guess, whatever it isn't, right? So whatever it isn't right now is what we would change it to. And we can just say this is a uint32 interaction. Oops, I didn't mean to close that parentheses. We'll just make one of these. So what I'm going to do here, just so you can sort of follow along with what I'm thinking, what I'm going to do here is I want to make ways of just making these interactions pretty easy to create. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a generic interaction that's a uint32 interaction where I pass in what the type of the uint32 interaction is, then anything that does that can use this function to generate one. So in this case, I'm going to do debug pause, or set pause. And so in here, I'm going to say debug interaction set pause. And that's going to toggle the pause on and off. So that's all I really needed that to do. And similarly, I'll do another one here, which is like let's see, I maybe do something like set, to be honest with you, we could even do these fairly generically. Like, these could be just like, if I wanted to set a value in the debug state, I could just make it so we pass an address. So we could do something even more ridiculous, which is just like, you can just do totally generic stuff here, like set uint32, which is like anything that's a uint32, it can set, right? In fact, this set element type could even be written in terms of set uint32, if that's what we wanted. And that kind of seems like kind of cool to me, actually, because then it's literally just a straight op that it does that anyone can use. So I can say, oh, what I wanted to do was I want to set a particular thing. I want to set whatever the debug pause value was, and I want to set it to whatever the debug pause value is not, like whatever the opposite of it is. I can do something like that, and I could leverage that same interaction to make some action buttons that were like, that allowed me to jump the viewing frame to the various frames that we actually have, like these. So if I want to jump to, if I want to jump to the oldest frame, then what I could do is say, well, set uint32 interaction, debug ID. I want to set the viewing frame ordinal. And I want to set that to whatever the oldest frame ordinal is. And again, that's just kind of, it's just like a poor man's lambda, right? If you wanted to start using crazy C++ features, which I detest, you could imagine making a lambda out of these, for example, and or some other kind of a closure if you're in a language that had better closure support and that sort of thing. So something like this. You get the idea? That's not what I wanted. Most recent frame ordinal. And so then all I'm really saying is, well, you know, much like we had, and I guess I should get rid of these since those don't relate. What I'm saying here is that instead of having to make a bunch of interactions that are specific to what it is that I'm doing, if I just take a look at like set element type interaction, for example, and what that does, I can make this much more generic by saying instead of set element type interaction, I can just make this be a set uint32 interaction, and instead it's just like, what's the uint32 target? Like, what am I going to overwrite, and what am I going to overwrite it with, right? And then instead of having the concept that the debug element is a separate thing, that's like, you know, more specialer. What we can do instead is sort of have basically binary functions. Any kind of binary function can be represented here relatively straightforward, right? We can do void star target, and then we can just sort of say, well, whatever the value is that we're going to store goes in the other place, and off we go, right? So at that point, I can say, okay, whatever the target is, that goes into the target slot. So instead of element, it's just target now, like so. Whatever the value is goes into the value slot, and in this case, we can just generically treat uint32s this way, but can have other functions that take other things besides uint32s, like so. And that's a lot more generic, right? So now, when we go in here, instead of set element type, we wouldn't even have that one. We would just have set uint32. Then what we can do is say, well, the target has to be the same instead of the element having to be the same, and then it again can test that generic element there. Okay. So let's push forward. So an element interaction itself, I guess we can still have, for the time being, since that's not particularly unusual, we can still put that in here. I do think, though, I'm going to not quite replace that just yet, because I want to do a couple of the things first. So when we do set profile graph root, that is probably another example of a place we could have done a set, if this would just be a set pointer, right? You could imagine this just being a set pointer interaction. So we could do something like set pointer interaction, and we would just say, well, whatever the element is that we're talking about here, we know that it's GUID, that's the thing that gets set. We know that the graph's profile root node, we know what that is because that's what our graph view information tells us. Unfortunately, I guess I don't know if I have that in here. I can easily get it. Right, because here's that debug view. So if I want to, I can say, all right, well, we'll get the debug view then. In fact, I could even, if I want to, I guess do it a little higher up, although there's no really need to do that unless we're actually in the rectangle in question, so I might as well just leave it there. But point being, I can do this zoom interaction instead by essentially just saying, I want to do a set pointer interaction. That set pointer interaction is going to set the view root GUID, whatever that thing is. Let's see what that actually is. I'm going to look for set profile graph root here. So set profile graph root, what I want to do is do exactly this. So I want to set the profile GUID. I'm just going to say, hey, here's that profile graph GUID. I want you to overwrite that with my GUID that I'm looking at right now. And that's all I have to say about that. So this all goes away, and now we are just left with this, which is much nicer, right? So again, that means we can get rid of some of these interactions. Oops. We can get rid of all of these, really. Like these are gone. We could, in fact, get rid of probably even this one. But I'm gonna keep going first. So let's go ahead and say what else we got here. So debug interaction. Here's another zoom interaction for set profile graph root, right? Again, this is exactly the same thing as before. It's just this code. And we should probably pull this out anyway. This is some common code that we don't really need to have multiple copies of. Right, I mean, we're not getting anything out of that duplication. It's just wasted. So here we are at element interaction. I believe element interaction is probably still fine. Like I said, we're going to probably put that back in. I just want it to be gone for now so I can look at all the debug errors. Let's see here. Element is not a member. What's going on here? Why am I not? There we go. Debug ID undeclared identifier. I thought we had debug ID. It's graph ID, I guess. But what were we using for these interactions before? We should have been able to have a debug ID for them. Why don't we have one at the moment? That's a little bit weird. Were we actually using the graph ID in this case? I guess we never made a debug ID for these guys, which we should have because they have one, right? They do have debug IDs. It's the stored event pointer. Not the stored event pointer. It's the element pointer is a more accurate one than the graph. So graph plus element pointer would be a good debug ID. I'm going to put it to do here too. Yes. Element is not a member of debug interaction. Oh, sorry, debug ID and card identifier. All right. Graph ID. And same thing here. Set pointer interaction. Identifier not found. That's true. So I'm gonna grab these guys and just pull them up to the top to where we've got our interactions somewhere. Don't really know where. Probably up here. And I'm gonna make two of these. So we've got set pointer interaction, and that's just going to have, you know, pointer to a pointer. Unfortunately, C is bad at this. C++, I should say. C is not bad at it. C++, because, like I said, they always get everything wrong. And so that's actually one that's going to be a little annoying, as you'll see, but it's okay. So do set pointer and set uint32. And then that's, I think, all we should need for what we're trying to do. What is the actual definition here? I guess we can just use generic. Well, you know what? I'm gonna make another one. There. Okay. Debug interaction set pointer. I didn't make one of those? Yeah, I guess I didn't. All right. Let's keep cruising here. Oops. Yeah, and so this is the annoying part. Like, I don't know why they insist on doing that. I assume that it has something to do with the inheritance pointers being different. But it would be nice if you could have a, this is a pointer to a pointer. All pointers are the same size. Trust me, stop complaining. Because pointers, could be different sizes in other, some kind of weird implementation of some other feature. But I want the version where I'm saying, no, I'm telling you, all my pointers are the same size. Stop your whining. But there's no way to do that I know of that is relatively straightforward. Anyway, so let's continue here. This is the slider ID stuff. Again, this interaction we can just use set uint32 interaction. Again, this is again totally trivial. I can just say whatever I'm doing, I'm going to set the debug state viewing frame ordinal, and I'm going to set that to the frame index. And this will no longer pause when we click, but that's okay because I never really wanted that. I just did that because we didn't have a way to do click pause, if that makes sense. I'm sorry, we didn't have a way to actually manually pause. What I want to do is like manually pause, because most of the time I'm not scrubbing. All right. So let's see. This is set profile graph root. So this is the graph. So what is the actual value there? Graph. Let's see. View profile graph, or I guess just graph GUID. So what I want to do here is I want to do set pointer interaction. I want to set the graph GUID, and I want to set it to nothing so that it, just gets cleared. What is this saying? And also, I suppose now I can just make this can actually just come in here and do this. Yeah. So set element type interaction. This is really just a set uint32 now. And I'm just setting whatever the element type is. And this doesn't need to be there anymore. Let's see. Set pointer interaction. Of course. Yes, thank you so much for reminding me of that. And the problem is, so if you just set it to a void star, because I could just do a void star, but then you would oftentimes accidentally forget it and do that, which you don't want. So you want to generate an error if you don't do this, but you don't want to have to cast it every time for no apparent reason. It's really annoying. I hate that. Anyway, let's see. Boolean button. It doesn't take 3 arguments. Really? It doesn't? Oh, you're right, it doesn't. So why are we... Oh, because it couldn't compile that uint32. Okay, that's fine. All right, can't convert debug type to uint32. That one I suppose is okay. Pause. Is it just called debug pause? No. What's it actually called? We have the pause. I know we do because it's in there. Paused. So let's see. Set uint32 interaction. Cannot convert argument from b32 to u32. That's fine too. Something accidentally put a period instead of a comma. And let's see. Auto modify variable. most recent debug contribution element. So this we have to reinstate, which we will. So that'll be fine in a second. Profile graph root. Oops. Profile graph root is not something we need anymore. We only need set uint32, which is going to do a simple write. It's going to say the interaction target equals the interaction uint32, like so. This will disappear. This will cast to a u32 so it can write it. And the exact same thing will happen in the pointer case, like so. It'll take the target like this, and it will write the pointer into it, if that makes sense. All right, so getting down to very few errors now. That is also fine. And so is that. And we are done. So that's good. So that's all finished. So now all I have to do is pop back up here and allow there to be a data member who is the element. And then we're done. All right. So let's see if we're still working. We still work like that pretty well. We can still zoom, I believe. Yeah, looks fine. What else can we do here? We can now test to see whether our debug control works at all. Here's our jump commands. Here's our pause. So what I'm going to do there is hit pause and see we stop. Pause again, we keep going. So that's good. I can jump to the oldest, the most, or the most recent in either case, right? Should really make what the one you're viewing show up more, but because we should probably make that be like an outline across the thing so you can see what the filled color is. Anyway, a lot of stuff we could do there to improve it. But basically all good. All right. So that's all happy. Now what I think probably we should do is I'd like to go ahead and clean up the layout code now, because like you saw, the layout code's a little bit busted there. I am wondering if now might be a good time to split this into a second file as well, because we've got like a bunch of code that's UI code and a bunch of code that's collation code, and I am just wondering if maybe it's at the point where the the UI code can sort of be included separately. That's what I'm thinking anyway. And we could sort of start that, right? We could sort of start that. And so maybe I'll do that. Let's take a look at what would happen if I was to pull out, let's see here. So, oops, not for quoter. Let's say I was going to go and copy this file, math.h. I'm going to copy this into Handmade debug UI.cpp or something. And then I will load code UI.cpp. Let's see here. Okay. So I've got this file now, and I'm just going to start pulling these things out. I'm going to include Handmade debug UI.cpp in here. I don't know exactly where I'm going to include it yet. I don't care at the moment. But I'm going to start pulling out some of the code that I would need for this stuff to work, right? So let's take a look at begin row, like that sort of stuff. I'm going to grab some of these out here. So let's take all of this stuff. And maybe even all of this stuff, and put it out here. All right. And let's take a look here. Interactions. I don't know where interactions really make the most sense to be. Do we even have such a thing as a variable iterator anymore? We do. It's in this nonsense. Debug draw main menu should really be recursive, and we should get rid of this stuff. There's no reason why we should do it that way anymore. I think I was just showing how you could do it that way or something. I don't know. It was dumb. Yeah, a lot of this stuff is just kind of sticking around. I don't even think we use that debug statistic stuff anymore either. Anyway, put that in there. I guess I'll also maybe copy this. And make this a place where we can store the structs. Okay, so here's the layout code that we have so far. And if we counted the interactions as part of it, which maybe we do also want to do, we would grab these out as well. Actually, these are probably first, because everyone else talks about these usually. And these are all for the collation stuff, except for maybe this. And the debug tree, I guess we could also say was maybe, well, not really. The rendering of it and the structure of it, I'm going to keep them a little bit separate for now, just because. Do we use debug string anymore? Like, what is that? That appears nowhere in here. I don't really know what that does, or if anyone uses it anymore. I don't think anyone does. You know what we're going to do here? We're going to comment this out for a moment, and then we're going to delete it if nobody uses it. Because I don't know if anyone does. Anyway, so yeah, so what we can do here is we could say, well, this code, you know, can include debug handmade debug UI.h and compile that. And obviously we gotta pre-declare that. And that looks like about it. Interaction is hot, is not found. That's because we actually didn't copy that over. Probably should. Interaction is hot. And okay, all of you should come over here. Interactions are equal also, and debug gets all of that stuff should probably be in here, right? So debug.cpp, interactions are equal, and all of this stuff, debug event to text, I don't know about that. Let's take a look. Debug IDs are equal. That should probably just be something that is included in the H file, I'm guessing, right? That's probably something that should be in here. So I need debug get text size. And probably debug text out at, like probably text op, all this stuff should probably be in there, right? Would be my guess. Is hex? Oh, is this? Oh man, we still have like highlighting control escape codes in here. Who was it that made me add those? That I remember that was ridiculous. But somebody was like, can we make it have like color codes in there? And I'm like, what? Yes, but why? And I don't know that they ever actually provided me a why that I'm actually okay with. But we did it anyway, and now it's in there. Clogging up the code. Okay, so debug get state. Debug text out at. Is that? Can we make debug text out at take this now? Is there actually anywhere that matters? Like, what even is debug text line? Is that something we even need? Because I don't think we need it anymore. Right? Yeah, nobody uses that. Goodbye. And debug text out at, everyone always has the debug state when they're actually calling that. So it's just a holdover from the old days that we were ever calling that in a way that didn't have all right. So now we've isolated that stuff, which is good. That's step one. So now I can like sort of see what we've actually built here for our system in a little more concise fashion, which is kind of nice, right? Again, people often ask me how do you divide files up as if there is a magic answer, but there is no magic answer. My procedure is just to divide files up in whatever way makes it easiest for me to concentrate on the information I want. Someday, after Alan Webster is done pounding editors into the ground with his raw and meaty fist, we probably won't even ever think about files again, because why would you? There's no, files are stupid. They don't even make any sense. I don't know why we're still programming with them. It's ridiculous. You'll just be programming along and you'll say, I want to see these 4 functions, and those will be the functions you see. That's like how any sane person would have made code editing if they weren't from 1950. But, you know, what are you going to do? Anyway, point being, since we're still stuck with text, the way I organize files is I separate them by the stuff that I want to see together. That makes it easier for me to think about how that system is working, like quickly see it, which is a little harder on stream because I have a lot less screen space since I have to use a big font in 1920 by 1080, but it's still the same thing applies. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do here is get rid of the stupid debug prefix that I put on everything for no apparent reason. And so that was like functions here. So I'm just going to call that text stop. Because they all take a debug state as the first parameter, so there's really no reason for it. We know that operator overloading, you know, I'm not trying to, they're only in here for this particular code anyway. You know what, why is this function even here? Text out at is just the same as debug text op. So yeah, it's just kind of a shorthand anyway. That should definitely be inline. It doesn't really do anything. It just translates one call into another. So yeah, these guys are just shorthand, and that's fine. Okay, so I'm just going to change those quickly, and then I'm going to sort of zoom through and trim that code off. There we go. And the last one, I think. Okay. Again, nothing should have changed, as you can see. And so now I want to go ahead and make this layout system a little bit more robust. So I'm going to take a look at everywhere where I'm actually using this. It looks like there's a couple other things that should probably still also be pulled over. Like this is all UI code, right? So this stuff should get pulled over. We've got like what is? debug requested. Interesting. Oh, so that's our stuff for testing whether you want to output something. All right. So this stuff should get moved over as well, like so. And let's go ahead and grab this out. Draw frame slider, draw element, draw main menu. Well, so there's a couple of ways I could look at this, and I don't know which one I want to do. I guess what I probably want to do for now is maybe not pull those things out, leave those in here, and say that this is just for sort of the generic UI code at the moment. Let's just say that that's true, just temporarily. I don't know that I want that to be permanently true, but I'm going to leave it that way for now. So if I take a look at where we're doing layout again, like I was saying, I think this is the only place that ever actually opens a layout at the moment. Everything else just kind of gets it from cascading away from the main menu stuff. So what I want to do here is I want to change this to being something where it actually initializes this thing a little more formally, right? So I want to have a thing where I'm like, oh, hey, when you're going to make one of these layouts, I want you to specifically call me. So I want you to say begin layout. And maybe I want you to say end layout as well. And this layout obviously has some stuff that has to go into it. So if we're copying this information here, then probably what I would need to pass is I need to pass the debug state. I need to pass the mouse p. I need to pass where I want it to be, like the upper corner of the layout. And that's about it. The rest of the stuff I think is not different, if that makes sense. So here's the upper left corner bit. There's the mouse p bit, there's the debug state bit, and then I just return that. Okay. And that way we can change this a little bit more freely now and not have to worry about it. So here's debug state, here's mouse p, here's tree UIP. And we might make that a little bit different in the future, but for now that's the way that's going to be. Okay. So that calls begin layout, and then at the end of all of it, in case it was important, we would call end layout. And so in end layout, we just pass the layout that we initialized originally. So that does what I wanted there. And now everybody, as far as I know, is actually going through this layout system. So now I can clean it up, tidy it up a little bit and make it a little bit more sane so that it can do the layout that we want, because like we sort of just ad hoc did it, and now that we know everything that we need in there, we can just kind of like lock it down, if that makes sense. So I'm going to grab the begin layout and end layout. I'm actually going to move those down so I can look at all of these guys together. So we can kind of see, here's all of our stuff, like begin layout, end layout, element rectangle. And I don't know, so begin element rectangle, I think, and end element are the pair there as well. We've got advanced element and so on. So what I would like to do is start moving these things into slightly more coherent places. So what I want to do is say, if I'm going to do begin element rectangle, then what I need to do at that point, I need to sort of have an opinion about how I'm going to store how I move across the system, right? And there's two ways I can do that. One way is I can say that when you call begin, I figure out where you should be, and do indentation if you need to do indentation at that point. Another way that I can do it is I can say, well, you're always going to draw elements where you are right now, and then only when you go to the next line will any sort of changes that you've made take place, if that makes sense. And the other thing that I think, where is the depth stuff here? Yeah. So the depth stuff is kind of busted as well, because that's just hard-coded into the layout right now. And I don't really want people setting that depth manually, which is what they're doing now. So I'm just going to make it be an underscore and that way we can know when people want to change the depth, if that makes sense. So like in here, we could just say set depth like so, right? And yeah, this is, I think, exactly the thing that I was saying before. I've complained about this in the past, and people don't believe me. I'm not sure why they don't believe me. Object-oriented people get absolutely livid when I say this, but I don't know what to tell them. You saw how long that took me to change, right? So I have no idea why anyone ever makes getters and setters for everything up front, instead of just only doing it when you actually need one. It saves you so much time in development. It's crazy that you would ever do it another way. The only time you ever make a getter and setter is if you know that the thing that's changing actually does something, or will do something, right? If you don't think it ever will, you should never make a getter and setter, or if you don't think the probability is like 90%, right? Because it costs nothing to fix. You change the name of the variable, you replace all the places where it gets called to set call, and that's it, right? I don't know. They're an interesting bunch, those object-oriented programmers. They've got, certainly have their way of doing things. So anyway, I just want to do that because, I don't know, I feel like that I want the latitude here to know that when we call set depth, I may have to set a flag to say readjust what you're doing, right? And I don't really know exactly how that's going to work. Like, so in this case, for example, if we were going to do a system where, you know, now that I think about it too, if we did a system where we only actually start when you call begin element, I wouldn't even have to make a set depth call. Right? Because if I wanted to do this, if I want to do that, I think I actually can. Because here's my thinking. What I could do is say B32 new line or something like this. And it's basically just a latch that says when you tell me that I'm supposed to go to the next line, I'll latch that, right? And then when you call begin element, I'll know that, you know, if that latch is set, I need to do my indentation computation, and if it's not set, then I don't, right? And so that actually seems like I won't even need, you know, if you want to cold set the depth, you just can. I think that probably just works. So let me try it first with that before I unnecessarily make someone go through an interface that doesn't actually do anything for no reason. Like, that seems fine to me. So I'm going to go ahead and set layout new line equal to true on startup. And that way, or you know what, I could even do it, I can do it without that. I can do line initialized. And that way, wow, initialized. Cannot type program cannot. All right, so line initialized, and set that to true. Or rather, I'm not going to set to anything. It's going to say false. And that way I'll know when the line has not been initialized. So when it calls begin element rectangle, in this case, you know, we'll start doing stuff. We'll do all of what, you know, whatever we have to do here where we do our interactions. And then what we'll do is when we say end element and we're computing where this thing should go, at that point is when we can initialize the indentation of the system, right? So what I can do here is say, all right, we've come in here. I'm going to say if the layout system has the line initialized unset, then I'm going to initialize the line so it won't happen again. And I'm going to set the at equal to the indentation level that we're currently at, which is this thing, right? Yeah. So that'll basically say, like, okay, if the line isn't initialized, the line is going to equal, well, it's going to equal this, right? It's going to equal the base corner plus the layout depth. And yeah, and off we go. Although I guess I'm saying in this case only the x is that way. So that's what's going to happen to line initialize. Similarly, what I might say here, I guess the line y stuff is okay as it is. It's a little janky. I wonder if I should clean it up. I don't know. Probably don't need to, and we're almost out of time. Anyway, I only got about 12 minutes left. So that's probably fine. Anyway, that will do the line initialize stuff. So then what I need to do is say, well, if we're doing no line feed, then we just advance the x. If we are doing line feed, then we need to advance the y, but we can set our line initialized to false and clear it out. Similarly, we can say that the next y delta, since we don't know what it is, we can make that happen here. And so the thing that I don't know is why I decided to do it as a delta. I'm not 100% certain what the real point of that actually is. I guess it was easier to do it that way, maybe. I'm not sure. Anyway. So yeah. So now we've fixed our indentation bugs as well. Like all of those are gone, which is good. And yeah, you know what I might do? Because our profile, I might make our profile default to not go behind my head, since that seems like a good thing. Where is that code? Debug.cpp. So this thing, frame slider. So I'm gonna say, like, okay, let's maybe make it 1400 because, well, you know, this is the debug system. It's supposed to be quick and easy. I don't really want to have to keep fussing with it. Okay. So off we go. Of course, that makes these pretty tiny. We could store less back frames, certainly, if we wanted to. But now, at least, by default, it's not behind my head, which is nice. Right. All right. So all of that's good, and this all feels much better now, and I don't really know that I have anything else to say about the layout stuff, other than we probably want to make our buttons look a little bit more like buttons. That's probably it. So I could do that. That's actually pretty easy. Where is my button? It's not here. There we go. Debug UI.cpp button. So buttons are basically these basic text elements. Basic text elements are drawing stuff with debug text out. And if I just said, why don't you return me the dimension of the button, I guess, that would make it pretty easy for me to make the button that I need. So let's say we return the dimension. Does the element have anything else in it? It just has pointers to the dimension. Yeah. I'm just going to go ahead and return just the dimension itself for now. So in here, if I say action button or Boolean button, I think what I want to do here is make it so that I can... I'll try the action button first. We'll say that here's the dimension of the action button. I kind of want there to be more of a border to it. So I want to do kind of a Minkowski situation here. I want to do something like R2, like a border, I don't know, enlargement. And so when I come through here and I've got this dimension, what I would like to do is sort of increase it by twice that. So I want to do like a Minkowski diameter on that and say that why don't you make that bigger? I think I've got one of those, right? Is it just called, oh, it's called add radius 2. There we go. So I want to add the radius, I just want to enlarge that all around. And then when I do get max corner and adjust this thing, what I want to do here is just say, well, I'm going to offset it by the radius because obviously I want it to be centered inside there when I print the actual text. So that seems good. You know what I could do too? I could just make this even more ridiculous. Why not? I mean, it seems reasonable. So action button here, what's the highlight? What's going on here? So highlight, yeah, I could just say, well, the action buttons get a highlight too. Why wouldn't they? To think about that, how I want to do that. And then there's a border option that gets set here, right? And the border option is going to be like, I don't know, whatever the button border is. Let's say the button border is like 4 pixel border. And the color of the back thing is, I'm so totally making this up as I go along here. I'm just trying to give you what the idea is. There's a border color so that I can have that because everyone likes it when you have colors and things and stuff. And so there's a border, and then this is the backdrop color, and by default, I'll just say the backdrop color is invisible. And so when we do all this nonsense here and we come up with a particular size for these things, we do plus radius. You know what? I don't know why I didn't do plus radius here, but I should have, so that's a mistake. Well, is it a mistake? It's get max corner. It actually should be this. It's get max corner minus radius minus that. Right. I then want to do a push rect, right? I want to do a push rect to fill that rectangular dimension. So the element bounds, I want to actually fill them with something. And so let me go ahead and grab the code for that as well. So we have the backing transform here. So if I say, all right, draw to the render group with the backing transform, draw the element bounds, please, and draw them with the backdrop color. And oh, by the way, you don't have to do that if the backdrop color W is not, at least, if you just don't want one and you pass zeros for the alpha, it won't draw. It won't even bother recording it. We probably should make the renderer do that, to be honest. But anyway, we'll do that for now. I guess I can still return the dimension. Why not? But that should do it. So let's see. Add radius 2. What are you complaining about? Oh, this is not actually a rectangle. It's just a dim. So what I actually want to do is, I suppose, make I want to make the dim just add 2 times the radius. Right? I was thinking I had a rectangle, but I don't. I guess I could also just do this. Radius is not radius. I really want to call that radius, don't I? Only have 3 minutes left. Highlight. Highlight for the action button. That's actually not right. So the highlight for this guy, this is not supposed to be this way. The highlight for this guy is actually just supposed to be more like this, where we just have, that's the color that it normally is, and here's the color that it, I don't know, something like that. Cannot convert. Okay. From float to, that's true, so this has to also take a hot color. So we'll make that happen as well. And there we go. All right, so not much time left here, but there we go. So now we actually have some buttons, which is nice. But since we have multiple buttons on the same thing, we probably also need to, there's a little work we're going to have to do for making sure these highlight properly. That's a separate issue though. But soon we can do some more fancy stuff here anyway. All right, so that's good, and that's a fine place to leave it. We're almost done with all the layout things we need here, so that's fine. And yeah, okay. And I'll leave it there. We don't really have much time for questions, but I'll take a couple real quick ones if they're quick. And then we'll go back and finish up some of that stuff tomorrow, and we can take more at that point. Remember to include your new Casey custom in the repo. Yeah, I gotta go get it from the other machine. Send me an email. Just send me an email. Is Insobot spoilering the witness right now? What is Insobot doing? That's amazing. Long Boolean, could you explain your poor man's lambda, how it works, how it is like a lambda, and how it is not? So basically, like, one of the things that C and C++ do very poorly, even though C++ has kind of started to try and go down this route, but just not very well, is they don't allow you to defer something you might want to do to a later part of the program. Something that, let's say in Erlang, would be stupidly easy, like I want like a coroutine or something where you're just saying I want to like do a little bit of this and wait or something. Things that would be very easy in languages that support full closures and stuff like that are like incredibly difficult in C++ because it just was never thought through, and they don't give you the features you need to actually execute them properly. So you can either start using what C++ has for lambdas now. And what a lambda is in C++, if I remember correctly in terms of what they actually implemented out of closures, was like if you have a function and you would like to create a little snippet of code that refers to some things in that function and then pass it to some piece of code that you're going to call and allow it to execute. So it's basically a pointer back up into a parent stack. You can do that, right? And I don't know if they can do the thing that we're doing here. I think maybe they could because I think it, well, no. So my guess, and I don't really know, but my guess is that C++ just doesn't have enough stuff to make this work. I don't really know. I couldn't tell you. I have no idea. I don't know what they did and didn't implement. In a language with full closure support, what you can do is you can just write any piece of code, and no matter what you happen to be referring to, it will simply know how to get back to that stuff, right? And so you can write a snippet of code and pass it to somebody as a bundle and say, I need you to execute this later. So to what extent you can actually do that with the new C++ features, I don't know. I know they don't support full closures for obvious reasons, but I don't know how much they actually do support. So what I did, and the reason that I say that it's kind of like a poor man's closure, is because what I do is I say, well, all right, in this case, I'm doing some stuff where like we're drawing this frame slider or whatever, and I have a thing where I want to sort of say, if I want to do an interaction that takes place when you click inside where I am right now, I want to remember the stuff I would have done. The most straightforward kind of a immediate mode user interface design would be that I just do it in here. So I do something like, if mouse down, do the actually assign frame ordinal, like I do this. Right? That would be the fully, the least complex version of the immediate mode UI for this. So I'm in the rectangle, I see the mouse is down, I just do the operation. This is a little bit tricky because then you end up in situations where it's hard to do certain more complicated operations when that happens, right? So I was just kind of showing you how you could defer things to later in case you're interested in being able to do that kind of operation in your UI coding. What I do is I say, well, let's make a structure that can remember some information about what we wanted to do so I can do it later when I actually go to process the UI, right? So what I'm doing is right here I'm bundling up the fact that what I wanted to do was I wanted to take this frame ordinal and set it to this. So it's a poor man's closure in that sense that I'm taking a snippet of code and I can't just use the language to bundle it up because the language is too dumb. But I can make my own struct that records what I want to do and know how to play it back. And so for some limited set of things, that'll just work. Does that make sense? The Sizik, do you ever turn on unused function variable warnings? Not normally, no. Quidman C, I am currently working on a 3D OpenGL project and implementing collision detection. I've been introduced to the idea of changing my vector space so my character is a perfect unit sphere, which should make collision detection easier. Do you have any opinion on this approach? Well, my first suggestion would be, I don't think spheres are very good colliders. But, I mean, maybe a sphere is okay. Usually people use a cylinder for the player, which is harder than a sphere to be sure. But a sphere has a bunch of weird problems. Like, it means that your guy, things that are, it leads to some unusual things. It means that, if here's the, wow, that's really bad ground. If here's the ground, right, and here is something that I'm going to bump into, and I'm using a player sphere, well, if this thing is this high off the ground, it means I can only go this far before I hit it. But if it's this high off the ground, it means I can go essentially all the way to like, I could go, I guess, to like right there. I could go like right here before I hit it. So it's really kind of weird because usually it doesn't make much sense to have it. It doesn't make sense to the player that if this thing moves up a little bit, all of a sudden they can walk much further in that direction. So my first thought is, player sphere, are you sure? Have you thought that through? Would be my first thing to say. And there is no warp that's going to make there is no like affine, like there's no vector transform you're going to do that makes a sphere, a cylinder into a sphere. So all right, I'm gonna close this up. Let's see here. There we go. All right, thank you everyone for joining me for another episode of Handmade Hero Show, where we code a complete game live on stream. I feel like I should say that because I don't think I said it at the opening. I think I just said that it was special, which is true. If you want to follow along the source code, you can always do so at handmadehero.org. You can pre-order the game, and it comes with the source code. So if you want to do that, you can do that. It is right there. We also have a forum site you can go to where you can ask questions. We have a Patreon page you can go to support the video series. We have a tweet bot that tweets the schedule at you when they don't reboot my server. Speaking of the schedule, I'll be back here 5 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time tomorrow. Until then, have fun programming, and I will see you guys on the internet. Take it easy, everyone.